Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
من جديد. ارتفعت حصيلة الضحايا في أفغانستان إلى 14 شخصا.
The death toll in Afghanistan has reached 14, and dozens of people were wounded during a violent demonstration following a report published by the U.S. magazine Newsweek. According to the report, American interrogators at Guantanamo Bay desecrated copies of the Holy Quran. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice urged Muslims not to respond to incitement, adding that the U.S. authorities are investigating the issue. Once again, the infamous Guantanamo Bay Detention Center is at the forefront of the news, but this time the issue is igniting the anger of Muslims, resulting in violent reactions in a number of countries which are U.S. allies, such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. A Newsweek report revealed that the Holy Quran is being desecrated. Such a matter hinders American efforts to improve its image in the Islamic world, which has been deteriorating tremendously due to the war with Iraq and the American abuses at the Abu Ghraib prison and at Guantanamo Bay. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, initial investigations did not yield any evidence supporting these allegations. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice directed a message to Muslims in the U.S. and around the world, calling for calm.
During the past few days, we've heard
from our Muslim friends around the world about their concerns on this matter. We understand and share the concerns. Sadly, some people have lost their lives in violent demonstrations. I'm asking that all our friends around the world reject incitement to violence by those who would mischaracterize our intentions.
In Afghanistan, the report has generated the largest anti-American protests since the collapse of the Taliban regime. Demonstrations were organized in various parts of the country, and a number of people were either killed or wounded. The protesters clashed with the police.
I believe that there are foreign hands behind the demonstrations in Afghanistan. By those who are not benefiting from the international and coalition forces, they try to escalate the situation by encouraging protests.
Amidst incitements and condemnations, Washington is trying to alleviate the anger generated by the report on desecrating copies of the Holy Quran, promising to unmask the truth.
At least 6 people were shot dead in clashes with police as protests spread to more Afghan cities today. 3 died in clashes between security forces and demonstrators against the alleged abuse of the Quran at Guantanamo Bay. Officials said earlier that another 3 people were killed during protests near Faizabad, capital of northeastern Badakhshan province. The deaths brought to 13 the number of people killed in the biggest outpouring of anti-American sentiment since the fall of the Taliban in 2001. Demonstrations were also held in a number of cities across neighboring Pakistan and in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. The protests were sparked by a small report in Newsweek magazine last week that interrogators at the U.S. military detention center in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, desecrated copies of the Quran by leaving them in toilet cubicles and even stuffing one down a lavatory to rattle Muslim prisoners. United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said yesterday that disrespect for the Quran will never be acceptable in the United States. Rice said in a statement before she testified at a congressional hearing.
Disrespect for the Holy Quran is not now, nor has it ever been, nor will it ever be, tolerated by the United States. We honor the sacred books of all the world's great religions. Disrespect for the Holy Quran is abhorrent to us all. There have been recent allegations about disrespect for the Holy Quran by interrogators at Guantanamo Bay, and that has deeply offended many people. Our military authorities are investigating these allegations fully. If they are proven true, we will take appropriate action.
The escalating violence in Iraq has claimed at least 5 lives with a series of blasts and shootings in Baghdad and Maqouba. An improvised explosive device aimed at a U.S. convoy was detonated in the Khadra area of the Iraqi capital. It exploded on a military Humvee as a U.S. convoy traveled through a highway of Baghdad. A witness said all crew were burnt inside the Humvee, but the U.S. military had no immediate reports of casualties. In Maqouba, north of Baghdad, 4 Iraqi soldiers were killed and 4 guardsmen wounded when a car bomb blew up near their vehicle while on patrol. Police sources added that a bus, which was on the side of the road, exploded as a convoy of the Iraqi National Guards drew closer, damaging one of the vehicles. Later, unknown gunmen opened fire on a police checkpoint in the Al-Adil neighborhood in Baghdad, killing at least 1 person and wounding another 4. Further north, residents of the town of Al-Qa'im on the border with Syria were angry after a mosque and residential areas were damaged during a U.S.-led offensive against insurgents. The U.S. military launched a major offensive on Saturday in the town, which it says is a key base for foreign fighters. Over 1,000 U.S. troops are taking part in the operation, and the U.S. military says it has killed more than 100 insurgents. Several Marines have died in fighting. Meanwhile, the lawyer of Iraq's former Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz said that U.S. forces will release 18 detainees in the next few days. These include a number of those on the 55 most wanted list, such as former advisor to Saddam Hussein, Amir Rashid, and his wife Rihab Taha, the British-educated biologist known in the West as Dr. Germ. 44 of the 55 on the list are believed to have been caught or killed so far. Saddam Hussein's former deputy, Izzat Ibrahim al-Duri, is the highest-ranking former regime official still at large. An Australian Muslim cleric who is in Iraq to negotiate the release of kidnapped contractor Douglas Wood said he is still confident Wood will be released after meeting Sunni religious leaders. Sheikh Taj al-Din al-Hilali said he had held talks with members of the Committee of Muslim Scholars, which was to publish a statement calling for Wood's release. The cleric also sent out an appeal to the kidnappers to allow medicine to be sent to Wood. Meanwhile, Japan has said the apparent kidnapping of one of its nationals in Iraq will not affect its troop deployments there. Speaking on Al Jazeera television, Japan's foreign ministry said Akihito Saito was reported missing after his car was ambushed on May 8th. Several others traveling with him are thought to have been killed. The militant group Ansar al-Sunnah has said it seized Saito. Tension has risen on the Lebanese-Israeli border as clashes raged between Hezbollah fighters and Israeli forces. Israeli warplanes struck the border near the occupied Shebaa farms. An Israeli helicopter fired at least 2 missiles near the town of Khiam, west of Shebaa. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Earlier, 4 explosions as well as gunfire were heard in Shebaa farms. The flare-up came 2 days after a shell fired from South Lebanon landed in a northern Israeli town, damaging a building but causing no casualties. Hezbollah said the shelling was a response to Israeli assaults only minutes earlier.
Hello and welcome. Prime Minister Najib Mikati insisted elections will be held on time later this month and pledged to try to find ways of amending an electoral law that the Maronite Church said is unfavorable to Christians. The church has warned the law upsets Lebanon's religious coexistence. Mikati said he will re-examine with Parliament the flaws of the 2000 law to see if some of its constituencies could be amended in such a way to safeguard coexistence. The Prime Minister, who met Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Nasrallah Boutros Fair, also insisted any plan to delay the polls should be taken by the Parliament headed by Speaker Nabih Berri. The opposition, mainly the Christians, insist the election should be based on the 1960 electoral law that stipulates smaller constituencies instead of larger ones. But the opposition agreed to draft joint lists to boost Christian representation in this month's elections in a bid to patch up differences. Habib Attah has more.
The opposition held a meeting of the heads of its factions in an effort to draft joint electoral lists to contain what it called the flaws of the 2000 electoral law imposed by the Syrian-Lebanese security authorities. In a statement, the opposition also accused Syria, which officially completed a troop withdrawal from Lebanon on April 26th, of continuing to intervene in Lebanon through its allies in a bid to jeopardize the democratic process in the country. The statement came a day after the Maronite Church warned that the Syrian-tailored 2000 electoral law would marginalize Christians and upset Lebanon's delicate religious coexistence. The opposition also called for the release of jailed former Christian warlord Samir Jaja before the elections in the interest of national reconciliation. A source close to the slain former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri told AFP that the committee would meet soon and include Christian and Muslim opposition figures such as Druze leader Walid Jumblat, Hariri's son and candidate Saadeddin Hariri, and Christian hardliner Michel Aoun. Meanwhile, thousands of Christians from across Lebanon rallied at the seat of the Maronite Church in Bukirke, northeast of Beirut, to pledge their support to the Cardinal Nasrallah Sfer, who was fiercely opposed to the 2000 law. Sfer appealed for unity and told the demonstrators that, quote, Lebanon belongs to all of its sons, not just one religious faction. He said Muslims and Christians must choose their own deputies in reference to the church's insistence that polls be based on a 1960 law that stipulates smaller, more representative constituencies instead of the larger ones preferred by the pro-Syrian camp. The Taif Accord, which ended Lebanon's 1975-1990 civil war, divides the parliament's 128 seats equally between Muslims and Christians. But the law gives Muslim voters a 60% majority, a decisive say in choosing many Christian seats. Sfer said it was out of the question to hold elections under such conditions, adding, quote, the Taif Accord gave us 64 deputies, and we have to elect 64 deputies. The press and some politicians who boycotted the opposition meeting, meanwhile, warned that brewing crisis over constituency boundaries could delay the polls. The elections are to be held in 4 stages starting May 29th. Aoun said on a radio talk show that all the options were open, including a postponement of the elections, did not exclude the possibility of the polls being boycotted altogether if, quote, one party insists on imposing its conditions. Christian MP Ghassan Mukhayber told AFP elections should be postponed by a few weeks in order to agree on a law acceptable to all or reduce the 4-year term of parliament to 1 year and task it with drafting a new one.
Mr. Saadeddin Hariri, son of the slain Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, said he would delay the announcement of his electoral list to allow more consultations with opposition factions and to cement national unity. He warned that some factions he did not name are trying to torpedo national unity that prevailed following massive popular rallies in Beirut on March 14th.
A statement from Saadeddin Hariri's office, the delay in announcing his list comes in light of the developments that the country has witnessed in the past few hours and a result of the discussions and decisions announced today by the opposition. The statement from the son of Lebanon's slain former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri followed opposition calls to set up a leadership committee to draft joint electoral lists to bolster Christian representation in the polls later this month. Hariri's statements of the delay would which are important in stressing the unity of the national stance and in containing the atmosphere of sectarian incitement. The 4-hour opposition meeting opened amid growing rifts and calls for the elections to be delayed after stern warnings from the powerful Maronite Church over constituency boundaries seen as unfavorable to Christians. A source close to Hariri told AFP that the new opposition committee was expected to meet very quickly and include figures of both Christian and Muslim opposition. On Monday, Hariri told thousands of supporters at his home that he will carry his father's mantle and run in one of Beirut's 3 constituencies. He initially had planned to reveal his list on Tuesday evening, and he has until Friday to do so.
In an interview with Future Television, General Michel Aoun said legislative elections should only be postponed if a better law is drafted than the current 2000 legislation. He called for dialogue with Syria. Aoun, who returned less than a week ago from 15 years of exile in France, urged Lebanese youth to make their positions loud and clear. He told Sarah Khoury the country is going through a transitional period, but was optimistic.
Certainly, it will be a good thing if they do it, but they have, to vote a new electoral law. If not, it is not necessary, to postpone the elections.
What kind of law would you like to see take place?
Well, that's a proportional law, or the other one, the one man, one vote. I think those 2 laws may be very good to represent all the Lebanese people and not to marginalize others. Everybody will be represented with this two systems.
The Israeli occupation forces used machine guns to fire at homes in the village of Kafar Shoba along the Lebanese borders, causing material damages to some of them. The National Lebanese Press Agency said that one Lebanese home was hit by Israeli soldiers who opened fire with machine guns from their position in Wisat al-Alam inside the occupied farms. Also, Israeli occupation warplanes raided As-Saddana Hills, targeting Al-Fakhar area in southern Lebanon. According to the Lebanese press agency, the Rameish village in the suburbs of Bint Jbeil is being targeted by Israel as we speak. Previously, the Israeli warplanes raided the outskirts of Habaraya village in Al-Arqub area in southern Lebanon. No reports were released about human or material losses caused by these Israeli raids. Meanwhile, the Lebanese resistance announced that it has attacked an Israeli occupation position in Wisat al-Alam using suitable weapons to achieve a direct hit. The Lebanese press agency reported a statement that was issued by the resistance explaining that this attack is in retaliation to the blatant attack of the Israeli occupation forces on the village of Kafar Shoba along the Lebanese borders and also damaging some of the homes there. The Iraqi Prime Minister Ibrahim Jafari extended a state of emergency throughout the country, excluding the northern region, for 1 month. American military operations continued for the 6th consecutive day in Al-Qa'im of western Iraq. We'll leave you with our reporter in Baghdad, Ziad Munajjim. For the 6th consecutive day, the American occupation forces continue their military operations in Al-Qa'im and nearby villages in western Iraq. There are reports that American warplanes and helicopters have been launching violent attacks against alleged armed groups' locations. The American forces are also erecting mobile bridges on the Euphrates River in order to reach the northern bank. Eyewitnesses indicate that citizens are carrying fierce battles against occupation forces and that they have been living in very difficult conditions after the American forces surrounded their villages and prevented food supplies from reaching them. Armed clashes continue inside Iraqi cities, and an explosive device detonated as an American patrol unit was passing through the highway near the Amariya neighborhood in western Baghdad. In the process, one American Humvee was destroyed, but no casualties or injuries were reported. Armed confrontations also took place between the Iraqi army and armed groups in Al-Ghazaliya neighborhood of western Baghdad. This comes after the Iraqi National Guards raided and searched homes in the area. No reports of losses caused by these clashes have been released yet. In Baqouba, northeastern Baghdad, 2 Iraqi soldiers were killed when a booby-trapped car exploded near a tractor trailer belonging to the Iraqi army and carrying 40 Iraqi National Guards. Armed groups launched mortar shells on a checkpoint controlled by the Iraqi army in Al-Hilla, southern Baghdad, killing 3 National Guards and injuring 3 others. According to a statement released by the United States Army, 3 American soldiers were also killed in separate attacks that took place in northeastern Baghdad. Armed groups assassinated a senior official of the Iraqi security agency by opening fire on his car as it was going through Baghdad International Airport Road. They also kidnapped a National Guard officer in Al-Basra in southern Iraq. Ziad al-Najid, Syrian Arab Television, Baghdad.
Ziad al-Najid, Television Arabi Suri, Baghdad.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, thanks for joining us. This is JNN English News and I'm Fariba Wahid in Tehran. Secretary of Iranian National Security Council says the European Union is killing time in a bid to halt Iran's civilian atomic program. Hassan Rouhani told the Italian daily La Repubblica on Friday, Under Article 4 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Iran does have the sovereign right to enrichment of uranium, and that nobody inside the country would tolerate any modification of trade in this national right. Tehran holds the European three responsible for unfruitful talks with Iran in violation of commitments made in the Paris Agreement. The senior official at the Supreme National Security Council, Ali Agha Mohammadi, made the remark at Iran's channel to panel discussion late Thursday, when he also emphasized that Iran is determined to resume some nuclear activity in Isfahan center. Meanwhile, head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, Gholamreza Aghazadeh, told the same program that resumption of some nuclear activity is certain to take place, but that no fixed date has been yet set for it. This is while former Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Hans Blix, is terming as futile the threat posed by the US and the European countries to refer Iran's nuclear case to the UN Security Council. Former Chief UN Arms Inspector then cast doubt over allegations by Washington and Tel Aviv over Tehran's drive to come up with atomic weaponry, and criticized remarks by the British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw, who had claimed earlier Iran is wasting time to build atomic bomb. The United Nations month-long NPT review conference is underway in New York. On the sidelines of the gathering, head of a U.S. NGO, in an interview with the JNN's correspondent, had this to say.
I don't think this conference is going to achieve anything. The only country in the world that can take the lead in nuclear disarmament and moral sanity is the United States. And this administration is intent on building 80 new hydrogen bombs a year. It has a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons, over 11,000. It has a policy to fight and win a secret nuclear war against Russia. And Russia follows the United States. It's got over 12,000 nuclear weapons, and of the 30,000 nuclear weapons in the world, Russia and America own 95%. And I see the rest of the world as pathetic. They're like sheep. I don't see any leaders of any country having the courage and the audacity to take on the United States and Russia. There's no evidence that Iran is going to make a nuclear weapon. It's abiding by the law of the NPT, and it has an absolute right to make a nuclear reactor.
Friday is holiday in Iran, but somewhere in the capital, Tehran, saw no trace of holiday. It was a registration office for the presidential election, which witnessed 163 more candidates enroll for presidency on the fourth day of the registration, and brought the figure up to 565. Among the renowned candidates registering today for June 17th presidential election were former police chief Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, head of physical education organization Mohsen Mehralizadeh, Tehran's mayor Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and former parliament speaker Mehdi Karoubi.
في محاولة لتشجيع وضع نموذج فرنسي للإسلام يعتزم.
In an attempt to promote a French model of Islam, the French Interior Minister has allowed the construction of new mosques. This new step comes after the French government decided to teach French to hundreds of Muslim imams, after realizing that many of these imams do not speak the language.
لا يتحدثون اللغة الفرنسية.
The return of imams to schools to learn French was motivated by the French government's decision that was passed last February with the objective of integrating the Muslim community into the French society. This comes after the large controversy that took place in the country last year over the passage of a French law that prohibits Muslim women from wearing the veil. The French government decided that imams must learn French after the release of a study saying that 400 imams who work in French mosques do not speak the language. This means that 1/3 of the country's imams, whose number is estimated at 1,200, do not speak French.
This project aims at satisfying the needs of the new French Muslim generation in France, and the desire of the French government to have educated, enlightened, and culturally aware imams.
The objective of these steps is to fight Islamic extremism and promote moderation among the second largest religious group in the country.
We want to see modern Islam in France that will be led by well-trained imams who understand our country and civilization and respect the law that was passed in 1905. We do not want an Islam that comes from abroad.
The European College of Behavioral Science is currently training 60 imams. By the beginning of the new school year in September, 2 universities in Paris will give scholarships to imams that were born outside France to teach them French law and history.
The Muslims need imams who have obtained religious education, but who are aware of the modern world and fluent in the country's language, so they can communicate with the public.
France has about 4 million Muslims, making up the largest Muslim community in Europe. Most of them are Arabs and Africans.
مدينة كان الساحلية السياحية المتربعة للساحل الفرنسي.
Now to France. For 11 days, the touristy coastal city of Cannes on the Mediterranean Sea will be the center of the film industry. 21 films are competing at the Cannes International Festival for the Golden Palm, the festival's top honor. A gathering of movie stars, behind-the-scene reports and reviews on the latest Star Wars film. Ahmed Sakhri sheds more light on the festival's opening night.
في هذا المكان الأخذ الذي يجمع بين الجمال والرومانسية بمدينة كان المتربعة.
Movie stars flock to this enchanting region combining magic and romance. The city of Cannes on the French Riviera is hosting one of the most well-known film festivals in the world, the 58th International Cannes Film Festival.
نجوم العالم وعلى البساط الأحمر سجلوا حضورهم في افتتاح المهرجان.
On the festival's opening night, movie stars such as Natalie Portman, Scarlett Johansson and Salma Hayek strolled down the red carpet. The 2005 film festival is for everyone, as the massive signs read. 21 films are competing in the festival for the Golden Palm Award. Opening the festival was the French film Lemming, directed by Dominique Moule. It's a family drama and is one of the 3 French films that have been accepted in this 11-day festival. Other films being shown during the festival are Last Days, History of Violence, and the latest Star Wars. Arab films are also being shown during the festival, such as The Return to Haifa by Palestinian director Tawfiq Abu Wa'il. For the first time, an Iraqi film is being shown at Cannes. It is called Kilometre Zero by Kurdish director Hainer Salim. A film called Morocco by Moroccan director Leila Mourakchi is being entered in the competition as well. Serbian director Emir Kusturica, president of the 9-member jury, will judge the films with his colleagues. The best film will receive the Golden Palm, the festival's top honor. The event is an important film gathering, and the glamour goes to the stars of this festival.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.